Why is it that we can go out to the golf range or the practice facility, work on what our coach or instructor or teacher has instructed us to do, and we can just hit it as good as we possibly can, be it in your full swing, your driver, your chipping, your wedge game, your putting. And then you go to the golf course thinking that you're going to play the round of your life, and you seem to hit it sideways. You chunk your chips, you slice your driver, you three-putt, and it says nothing seems to go the way that you expected, especially based off how you were hitting it at your practice facility. Well, there are reasons for that, and it largely has to do with the way that we practice and how we perform our skill. And I have a guest today on the show that is a world expert in sports performance, and he is also a world-class golf coach. And his name is Stuart Morgan, and he has Stuart Morgan Golf currently in Austria. Stuart has coached elite players at every single level of the game, from junior to elite amateur to touring professionals around the world, and presently has a full stable full of players from each. He is an amazing guy. I really, really enjoyed talking to him. He did at one time work and was head of the instruction for the IJGA Golf Academy here in Bluffton and Hilton Head, South Carolina. And for whatever reason, we could never connect when he was here, so we had to do it from halfway around the world, as I still live here and Stuart lives again in Austria. But this is an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed talking to him, learned a lot from what his expertise is in, not only in coaching, but what sports performance is, how you can improve, what golfers in particular are not doing to improve, and what they're doing to actually inhibit their development, their skills, and their growth. He gets into a little bit, and we discuss the difference between and maybe the misunderstanding of block and variable practice, and why that plays an integral role in a golfer's development, plus a whole bunch of other things. And you're going to find out he's a great guy, very, very knowledgeable on this topic, which is largely an untapped area of the golf coaching world and the sports world in general. So an awesome show. You're really going to love it. You're going to learn a lot, and it might just even help you to reach that next level that you've been working so hard to attain. So, as always, sit back, relax, and give a big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, Mr. Stuart Morgan. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world, with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they used to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This episode of the Golf 360 podcast is brought to you by Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms with their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model, which is often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns, and at Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you will receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Contact them today at 248-840-3863 or www.affinitywealthmg.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health,
and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order.
Okay, I am here with Stuart Morgan, an expert, fabulous coach in the golfing business. Stuart, thank you for coming on from halfway around the world.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Thanks for me inviting, and it's exciting to chat to you. I know we crossed paths briefly at Belfair when I did a junior presentation when I lived over in Bluffton and loved my time over there. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we tried to connect a few times before you had to leave, and I miss missing that opportunity because you've taken what I broached on in talks with my brother and other students who told me about you way further than I ever have. So I was very excited to reach out to you. When you said you come on, I'm really jacked up to hear what you had to say and learn a lot more. So I think it's gonna be fun for me and fun for a lot of listeners who really probably aren't as up to speed, whether they're coaches or students or what have you, on what you do as part of the industry. And I think it's a big missing link and have for some time.
Yeah. I think that from a little bit of context in my story was, I was out on tour teaching when I was 25, and I was working under the Ledbetter banner at that time, then went out on my own. And, it was really a poignant moment for me where I felt like I had a student there who was a good player and we were doing certain things and whatnot. And I felt like, okay, I feel like I'm just giving him information here. And I didn't really know after that, there has to be more than this. We can't just give the student information and just allow them to do with it what they kind of want. And that's to do with how they practice, if they're trying to change some kind of movement or whatnot, how does that work and whatnot. And when I reflected on it, I felt like I probably made him worse than I made him a better player, because it was I was looking through this lens of just this golf swing needs to look like this. And I got a little bit disconnected and a little bit disheartened by the whole thing. And yeah, then I for some reason, I randomly went to started. I'm a thinker, right? I go question and what's this about? And I ended up meeting a guy called Graham McDowell at a CPD seminar at the Belfry. And this was before moving to the US.
Mm-hmm.
A long time before moving to the US. And he kind of introduced me to a whole new paradigm of what practice is or what it could potentially be. And that's led me on to where I am today. So, yeah.
What was it that he was discussing or talking about that you hadn't heard or nobody else seemed to be touching on?
So he at that time he did a seminar. It was to do with ecological dynamics and constraints led learning, and it was it's just using language like what the hell is this? I've never heard of this. I was always a reader and whatnot, and I just this is completely different to me. This is looking at the whole organism of a human being, and not segmenting things of how do we influence the whole versus the segments of a golf swing or whatnot. And it was this is completely alien to what I'd been brought up in,
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was playing, it was during the Faldo era, it was always chop everything up and then try and build it all back together. And it was
right.
And this was well, no, let's just put everything together and let the human system self-organize based, around the constraints of, can be anything. You can add a task constraint on the golf course, even training aids in some ways are constraints as well, but they for me, they're not used in the right way basically. And it just led me on a journey. I think it was like a start because I was looking for something, I think at that time, like quite inquisitive.
Was that because
And
you weren't seeing the progress that you and the
no,
student thought you should be seeing, and you knew
well, it was
something
like,
was missing?
yeah, it was like giving somebody, just giving somebody information, right? And not helping them. Well, what do you do with that information? And when I look back at it, it's like, and I still see that going on today. It's like, well, I then started to ask, well, why should we? Is not an ethical element to go? Why should we as golf coaches? Why do we think that they can digest that information in the right way and then help them play better golf? Like this didn't make sense to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when again I started going on this journey. I'm still on it, to be quite honest. Like, starting to cross reference into like not for me working in other sports, but like learning from even like canoeing guys, and tennis guys and rugby kickers and things like this, just to understand like what they do and how we can kind of broach the subject or different things into golf as well. But I mean, what golf is like. It's an old sport, right? And it's very
Mm-hmm.
much like we've always done it this way. Why should we do anything else? And um, well, equipment's changed, the ball's changed, the the training elements have changed. So why can't how we practice and train be the next like paradigm of what we're going to get the edge on,
Right,
basically?
and I agree 100% because I had Blake Austin on. Well, let me back up. I always say to ask people a question towards the end. It's like, what do you see on the periphery that's going to be the next great thing? Because usually people in the center that are working on things, whether they're exceptionally well at what they do, but they're always focused on what they're working on, and they don't have the time or uh, might consider a distraction to look outside of that expertise. But it always seems like things come from the periphery. And I had on Blake Austin not long ago, and Blake is one of the, I guess, guru young baseball hitting instructors up around
Mhm.
Atlanta. And he loves golf. He's a golf fanatic. And we were discussing how uh, swing or speed training and even weight training have recently come to light in the golf industry, as you brought up. The
Yeah,
way we train is different, and he said speed training has always been a part of baseball from the
yeah.
dawn of the sport. So I'm right on with you that we got to bring in, look at how other sports train and how can that be adapted, or what can we pull from that to help golfers improve and train in particular ways.
And yeah, and I would agree with you. And I've spent so much time, especially over the last since I actually came back from the US, speaking to, like I said, I went through that phase in the US where I was like speaking to a lot of professors and doctors like Anders Ericsson, Robert Bjork, um, people like that,
I loved Erickson's book.
yeah, and it's very much from a very much from a cognitive learning standpoint, and I think there's some things that hold kind of true in that. Um, but again, we can't disconnect from the body as well, and how So if you go on to when he got back here, you start to look at like a guy called Franz Bosch's ideas on movement and looking at other sports and stuff like that. It's like, well, golf is somewhat, we train in very low context to what the game actually is,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's like
I
complete
think that,
opposite.
yeah, I mean it's and you look at a lot of other sports, and there's some kind of chopping up now and again, right, to like shine the spotlight on certain areas that they want to focus on, but it's still highly contextual to what they're trying to do in a match or or whatnot. Like even like in rugby, for example, like they even went from like the kickers used to just do like kicking training, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
as they become more like switched on, they were like, well, we shouldn't be doing it like this because when in a match, a kicker has to kick under fatigue. So now a lot of these teams are starting to train, and then they'll kind of break out with the number 10 or the number 15 kick in, and they'll go and kick under fatigue within the training session. So it's not like, okay, we're going to do kicking over here. it's now part of the whole picture,
Make it as
which
realistic as possible.
yeah, which makes complete sense to me, you know. And I also think that when we're looking at, I think we've lost touch a little bit with what golf is, right? With all these different things coming in and whatnot. And I think it will even itself out at some point. But if we really just strip it back to golf is a game, right? It's a game of, there is no system to it. It's whoever gets the ball in the hole in the least amount of shots in 72 holes is going to win the golf tournament. And if you look at everybody that's played the game, they all do it in their own way. And if we look at the game as a whole, yeah, we have tee shots, approach shots, short game, and putting. If you're looking at it in statistical elements, but fundamentally, when we look at it, certain things like help each other out to score, and we can look at how you swing it and you do all these things, and it's like, yeah, it's great, but the question is, for me, is how is that going to help you shoot lower scores? Because if you just go on whatever it is, a 3D machine, or even on TrackMan or whatever it might be, I love those things, but again, what are we trying to do with it? We're trying to help players either be healthier in their movement, if it's 3D, if there's an injury concern, produce more speed, great. Well, how does the speed then help us produce more, shoot lower scores? Great. But then we've got to see it. We've got to watch this stuff. We can't just go, oh, here we are, just crack on. As coaches, we need to go, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing. Brilliant. We're seeing some kind of intervention. We're seeing some kind of, whatever you want, if you term it, change or something that's moving. But is that happening in performance? And again, there's this like whole disconnect along this line somewhere of like, oh yeah, I just do that, and then I just go and play. But how does that work?
Yeah, it doesn't, because how many students in the past, before you really got on this track, which I think is what led you to this, and any coach out there or any golfer in general, regardless of skill level, you've worked on the range on whatever stroke it is, putting, chipping, full swing, and they can sit there and just hit any shot that they want to. And you think that they're going to go out and light the world on fire, and they come back and, hey, how'd it go? And you're waiting for this, oh, I shot my career low round. And it's like, I struggled to break 80, or I struggled to break 100, or, it didn't work. And you're scratching yourself or thinking, how the hell can that be when you just sat there and did it repetitively for the better part of an hour?
Yeah.
So yes, there is definitely a missing link there, which is
just
why
not
this
real,
is so
then,
important.
is it? It's like looking at it and going, well, that's just part of it, right? And for me, I don't think driving ranges are not going away, right? That's just
no, they're actually getting bigger and more extravagant.
Yeah, and they're a big business now, and that's cool. Even at golf courses and whatnot, that's fine. But I think we just need to learn how to use the time that we have. Even if you go on the driving range, what are you trying to do? Because when I've reflected on it, like some of the golf lessons that that I had given in the past. So let me back. So there's a lot of like golf coaches go, oh yeah, this guy's just turning up on like a Thursday or a Friday, and then having going to play like in his medal or his a club championship over the weekend. And you're like, well, how is that conducive to anything? But actually, if you're looking at it, he's probably just looking for some kind of performance fix to hopefully get him through what he's doing, right? So Is there going to be sustained learning? No, probably not. It's like cramming for an exam. Cramming for an exam is, if I have an exam on a Friday morning and I cram till 2 a.m. on a Thursday or Friday morning, I'm just hoping that enough information holds in my short-term memory that when I look at that paper in the morning, that there's enough in there to go,
that
I remember
the same question that you studied.
Yeah, I remember that, right? I haven't learned that. It's just like I remember it to pass that test. And if you kind of know that, that's no problem, right? No problem at all. But if you're wanting to learn something long term, that's just not going to cut it. It's just not. There needs to be there's a little bit more to it than that. But if a golfer turns up on a Friday and he's playing in a competition on a Saturday, that golfer, if he's a businessman or whatever, he's probably just looking for that cram. He's looking for something to hold his attention to get him through that tournament that he's going to play that next day. And if we know that as golf coaches, and we know that that is a performance fix, that's not a learning environment. That's just not. So there's a real different, that's a different, completely different golf lesson. And that's okay, because there's a lot of those golfers around. But if you get that one golfer that comes and says, yeah, I really want to put like a bit of a plan together, I want to improve this, improve that, then all of a sudden you can take that golfer through into a much different kind of learning environment of like spacing things out over time, implementing sort of retention tests, transfer tests, these kind of things, right? And that's that. It's just that segmentation of, are we there to learn or are we there to perform? And a lot of these golfers are turning up for a golf lesson. They just want to learn to perform for a short period of time to get them through that competition. And then they'll come back and they'll want something else.
Yeah, they get addicted to it.
And the thing is, I'm not sure they have the time either. Like a lot of, amateur golfers, do they really have the time and energy to really, really learn something within their golfing environment? They have busy lives, so that's fine. That's a golf coach's job. That's not my job, unless I'm at a tour event where, sometimes you do that as well. On a Wednesday, if somebody's absolutely just nowhere near, sometimes they need that.
Yeah, something to get them through until they can have 3 weeks off, and then you guys can get it work 100%. On whatever you need to. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, because so many, and I'm sure a lot of coaches who are out there listening to this will think, yeah, I've got that person that comes in a day or two before the club championship or city championship, member guest, whatever it is, and say, I need you to fix me. And it's like, okay, you should have been here a month ago so that we could have done the fix. Then you could have adapted it to where now, the night before the event, you're basically resting because you've implemented it and you've done it in such a way that it's solidified and you know how to use it in different situations. So you're doing it completely ass backwards, but if that's what you got, but I usually try to get with those students afterwards and say, hey, I know that this is what we did, but maybe next time, why don't we try this? I know time's restricted, so I'll work within your time frame. You tell me how much time you have to work, even if it's just making, I call it ghost swings in your living room while you're watching news at night, or don't watch the news, watch something else. You keep your sanity. And, I think even Hal Sutton on one of his shows was recently talking about if he could go back to his career, instead of ball beating like everybody did in the 70s and 80s and 90s, he would go back and do more mirror work or more slow motion work that save on his body and still develop whatever skill he was looking to develop, which I found very interesting.
I listened to a few of his show, and he's very, I think a lot of good players are very insightful, right? When you really kind of unpack it, they kind of do things that they didn't really know that they did. And if you like, the more I got into more the academic research of like learning performance practice, train under pressure, you could go to these guys and you could do like constructed interviews with them, and you could unpack, and there'd be loads of layers that you could say, well, this is why this person was good, right? Even to the point of where Mr. Nicholas always used to say that, I always hit a shot I never hit a shot without the true picture of what I was trying to do. Now, how true that is, we don't know because we weren't there with him. We can only take what he is saying. That's how good he was. Then you would say that's really, really effective based on what we know, and what the literature actually tells us. Because one thing we do see is that I'm just not sure we can turn on behaviors on and off. I think if we're going to commit to doing something to improve play, then we need to implement a lot of that into the golf environment that somebody's practicing in as well. And like I remember when I grew up, I grew up, I didn't have a driving range or anything at my golf course, but I used to use the golf course as a driving range where I'd go out at quiet times. And I know a few of my clients do this as well, where they just like drop balls down on the golf course and hit multiple shots, right, to
Mm-hmm.
flags and stuff like that. That to me is like, it's pretty logical, but I just don't see enough of it, basically.
You know, as we were talking about Sutton and better players as they look back on their career, and I didn't get to that level, but as I look back on what I did, and it's like, okay, you want to solve the problem on why you didn't achieve the level or the success that you thought you should have achieved, and I mean that was part of the reason for me starting this podcast. Outside of, I was going to write a book, and after talking to some people, and I know you've written a book, and it's like, well, why the hell would you want to do that? Why would you want to put yourself through the pain of writing a book? So I'm like, well, let me do the
Yeah,
podcast because it'd be a hell of a lot easier. Um, but I mean, you look for the reasons, and as you find them, you can start peeling layers back and saying, this is what I did well, this is what I didn't. I wish I could have done or known about that back then. But you're right that these highly successful players did things whether they realize they did or not until they start to talk about it. But then they can shed some light that we had no way to measure 20 or 30
yeah.
years ago, and now we do, and we still have a long ways to go. Uh, but
There's a
it's interesting.
fascinating. I mean, I just came across it from speaking to somebody in the academic world or in the pracademic world. They're a professor, but they also do a lot of coaching as well. And the guy called Terry Orlick, actually, I think it was back in like 1988. He actually did a qualitative study on PGA Tour players and Ryder Cup players, major winners. And I've asked like all my like friends in golf. I said, "Have you ever like doing your PGA training and whatnot? Like, have you ever heard of this?" And they're like, "No."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm reading this and thinking, "Oh my god! Like, this should be like on the number one reading list of like of everybody going through some form of PGA qualification because it's actually he's researched." And I just can't believe that it's just it is that way. And the two biggest things that came from his research of like tour players at that time was number one was commitment to the core to what they were trying to do. Like they were fully into it. Like that was what they were trying to do. There's no half-ass in it at all. It was like I am fully committed to trying to achieve this, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not easy. And the second one was quality of practice, and even in there was like terminology of like the players that kind of said about like I never hit a shot that didn't mean something. I never hit a shot without some form of consequence. And like now you're looking at that and going, we've got so far away from that that we need to be almost like looking back there to like reconnect a little bit to what some of these guys were doing because they didn't have what we have available to us now. They didn't have that technology. But
No,
they
I think
but
technology's gotten somewhat in the way. And as you say that story about commitment into something 100%, even 110%, that I used to watch, I don't know if they had it in the UK, but there was a show many years ago. I used to watch with my dad as a kid, Kung Fu. It was with
Oh yeah, I
David
remember
Carradine,
that.
the actor.
Yeah,
You remember that? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
never understood it. I mean, I was like 9 or 10. So in the beginning, when all the kids are sitting in front of the door to get into the facility the school, and then the older gentleman would come and he'd look and there'd be one less kid, and one would leave. He got sick of waiting, but and the only kid left was David Carradine as a young boy because he had nowhere to go. This was his
yeah,
only option, so he had to be committed to that because he had nothing else. And I think in today's world where we're bombarded with so much information and so many avenues to appease to somebody's ego a little bit, in that they don't want to do what might be difficult but is necessary, and they can go and get an answer that they want. It's like, okay, well, you're a couple degrees off on your path, so go work on this and you'll get better. And then they go get the same result that they got before, and they don't get any better. When they if they didn't have an option, they would have to find out something that worked
yeah,
regardless.
yeah. But I don't. And again, going back to, I don't think I'm not sure we will ever be in an age in golf where information is as available to people as it is today. It's like, you have the online gurus that do kind of copious amounts of like online tips and
Hmm.
stuff like that. That's not my thing, but I get it. It's like it's a business for a lot of people now, like doing these things. And it's like, people can just log on to there, do this, go and watch this and whatnot, and all of a sudden there's some information. But again, it goes back to that same thing of that epiphany that I had was, at 25. Well, I'm just giving information. Information alone is not enough. And actually, when I think back of it, like especially with some of the tour players, is that I'm trying to strip away information, if anything, rather
Yeah,
than give more
because they're getting information from everywhere. Anyone that's been to
everywhere.
a tour event, I mean, the pros are there's always somebody trying to grab them and pull. Hey, let me show you this. Have you
Yeah.
thought about this?
And when they go to an event, I mean, you've seen it as well, that, it's almost like when you get there, it's almost like managing cognitive load, right? It's like going, well, let's just do enough, but keep away from the circus that
The
goes
noise,
around.
yeah.
And yeah, and just get ready to go on Thursday, and just move around how we want to move around, rather than getting caught up into the, yeah, like you said, the whole noise of what's going on. And it's part of it, and they're very privileged in that respect, but they've worked hard to kind of get there, and there's certain things that they have to do which are part of where they are in the game, but it's not easy, right? It's you have to learn to manage that noise.
I was lucky to be. My aunt was a child psychologist, and didn't get her doctorate. She was just a few credits shy, and I always wanted to ask her why she didn't finish. But she wrote a book on child development that was, for many years, the cornerstone of learning in China over the last 20 years. And she worked with B.F. Skinner quite a bit back
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s. And so as I got older and understood what psychology was, I got into college level and I was playing golf and I wanted to understand it better. I would talk to her a little bit. So I had some general understanding. And then as I got into training, which is what I want to ask you about, the strength and conditioning world, which seems to do an exceptional job of what you're talking about. And then I got into reading about Tudor Bompa's work
Yeah.
and the Russians and the Bulgarians going back 100 years. And I even had Greg Half, Dr. Half, I don't know if you're familiar. He wrote
No.
periodization and training with Tudor. I think there's
Okay.
6 editions now, but he's in Australia now, but he does strictly on weight training, if I'm not mistaken. But that was eye opening as well, and which is why I like talking to you, because that's my introduction, and I've gotten into a little bit, but I like talking to you because you've gone much further. And I heard you talk on one show about, it might have been Me and My Golf's podcast, where you're talking about the strength and conditioning world does a phenomenal job at doing things that work in the industry or wherever that athlete is trying to get to. What do you see them doing right, and where do you see the golf industry that can borrow from them or
Well, I
learn?
think that like they're managing physical load more
Hmm.
than anything, of like when to do things at certain times, right? So players don't get in golf anyway, but to not be overly tight and stuff like that. Like they'll do off weeks where the player will go, okay, yeah, I'll ramp this up a little bit, and then they'll taper it off, which is basically what periodization is in the physical world, right? But
Right.
we also got to understand, in golf we also have cognitive load as well. So in skill development, as coaches, we need to manage that. But going back to the training element, the physical trainers, I think they have a real kind of key area. Like if you train right and you want to go and get stronger, more flexible, whatever, you go to a trainer, and they don't give you new programs all the time, but they stretch you, right? They they have this, and you go there, and you're not going there for more information. You're going there to train. You're going there to stretch your boundaries, to stress the muscles, to whatever, to help them repair and whatnot, to get stronger. Whereas in golf, why are we not doing that as well? right? Why are golfers not go into somebody and go, right, today we are going to train, right?
Hmm.
We're not going to give you more information. We are going to try and stretch you and challenge what you have. Like for me in my framework, I call this a red training, right? So this is like, you know, we're trying to almost like take them beyond what they're capable of and be there with them and kind of manage that. In that phase, you're going to fail a lot because if you don't fail, then that's,
Yeah,
you're
you're
not
not.
going to
Yeah,
learn
if you're
anything.
doing it right, you don't need. Then we aren't stretching you enough.
So you think of it this way, like in the personal training world, we go in, right? We get assessed. That trainer then creates a program. You have some self training, but it's a program. But then you also have personal training sessions, and they have this knack of stretching you just to that slightly, as Mark Guadagnoli would probably put it in skill development, that challenge point, right? Is like
Hmm.
just a little bit beyond what you're capable of.
Yeah, like 102% of one rep
Yeah,
max.
absolutely. And then it'll drop off. So in golf, it's like it'll drop off, right? So you'll do that in an off week, and then you get to a tournament, it's drop off, it's maintaining mobility and
Hmm.
more massage therapy and recovery and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, but that makes like so much. It makes so much sense.
It does, and that's why I find the correlations relatively close. But and I, some people say, well, we're in golf, we're working with the head, and I've always told psychologists, I said I don't envy your position because in a golf range I can see what they're doing, and I can
Yeah,
ball flight, movement, body patterns, etc. I said you guys can't see what's going on inside their head, so it's much more.
yeah,
You got to extract it from them and hope what they're giving you is correct. But I would say that as you're very good at developing the brain in a similar fashion that a trainer would develop somebody's muscle.
yeah. And it's kind of it's also linked to. So if we look at, we'll go back to Franz Bosch's stuff that he talks about with he believes that the body is capable of doing what it's doing, right? So it doesn't matter what you tell it, right? The coach can tell it whatever. It has its own agenda of like how it will move. And but if you're trying to, it's like coordination stability, right? So
Hmm.
so any time you have some new information to that athlete, and we'll talk high end athlete here because that's more the space that I'm in. But if you give any new information of movement, you destabilize the system. End of. Okay. So if you're doing that at the wrong time, how can you ever expect to perform?
Yeah, you're constantly destabilizing everything. They
It
never really
just
get
doesn't
any
make any
confidence.
sense.
Right.
The only way that I think elite performers can sometimes manage this is that when they go and play, they forget about it and they just play. And I think that's a skill in itself, to be honest. Um, but then we also have, well, if we're looking to coordinate a movement and stabilize some kind of movement, if we just do it in one area, the body and the brain will say, I can use this in this area only. So when we do it on a completely flat lie in a shed or a thing on a driving range or whatever, that's what it will think. This is the context that I use this. I do this in. So when we're actually looking at improving somebody's movement, that's fine to do it there, no worries. But we've got to keep moving them. We've got to be able to say if it's postural stability or coordination of movement. Well, can you do it on this lie? Can you do it on this lie? Can you do it on this lie? And you basically then, Damien Farrow said, a real great term for this is um, win. Sorry, lose, move, win. Sorry, lose, stay, win. Let me get this right. If if you could, sorry, win, move,
Hmm.
lose, stay. So if you say, okay, yeah, I did that movement in this position or in this lie or in this environment, I move on to somewhere else. If I don't, if I lose, I stay there until I'm able to stabilize. And it's a really good framework to be able to go, okay, I'm not going to overstay my welcome on a completely flat lie on the driving range. I'm going to do it here until to the point of going, yeah, I feel I can kind of do it there. I'm kind of, it's stabilized in that movement. Right, let's move. Let's go to this golf hole here if that's possible. Let's go and hit it off that lie there and see if you can do it off that lie. And that then starts to create that adaptability and that real kind of coordination and stability of a movement. So that in my world would be I do less kind of swing work now, but if somebody has a swing instructor, that to me would be a green practice. That's very much about stabilizing of what you're doing for the greater good kind of down the road.
Yeah, especially
Basically.
for the better players, because I've noticed this in I've had some. I haven't not taught anybody at the highest level at the tour level. I have had a number of slightly under, but mostly where I find it is, and they get better at it as they go from, let's say, a Division One or collegiate level to a more achieved professional level, is the kids coming out of Division One or very successful in college. When they get to the pro level, they always want to revert back to, well, I need to work on my swing more. I'm not quite hitting it the way I want to. And getting through to them that they're never going to hit it the way they want to, or if they do, it's going to be one round a year.
Yeah.
When they least expect it, it is sometimes difficult. And I have a student right now. He's a great kid, and he just turned pro this year. And we're working on that now to where he keeps saying, he says, well, I got to go work on my swing. And we went out and played a couple weeks ago, and I have played maybe 10 times a year for the past 3 years. And we play 9 holes, and I shoot 1 under, and he shoots 2 or 3 over. And he's just, I can see the anguish on his face because he knows he should beat me, and I know he should beat me, but he doesn't. And he says, well, how did you do that? And I said, well, look, I know where to apply the skill that I've developed in each situation where you're just using the same one over and over and over.
100%. And what you're doing as well, based on, again, what you're talking about, he's probably looking at it in a segmented fashion,
Very
whereas
much.
you're playing the game, right? You're playing golf to score. Now the thing is with those athletes, if they get into that headspace of you of being able to connect to the game again, of like whatnot, he's going to kick your ass more often than you're ever going to beat him,
Right.
because he has way more physical skills and whatnot.
He's half the
But
age. He's playing and practicing every day, and
yeah,
and
but
so
the thing is, if we go into again, and you see it all the time, it's like, I think there's a comfort element in it where players go, and I can somewhat empathize with that. Like, we're all searching for an element of comfortableness. But golf elite performance is not comfortable. You have to get it around when you're not feeling comfortable.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think he's had that round yet where he's realized that. I mean, I can tell you that the round, the tournament, and everything that I actually did that. And after that happened, it's like, oh, that's how you do it. It doesn't matter if you're hitting it crooked.
I'll tell you 2 stories about that, which will, again, if he listens, he will. It might resonate with him. So, pre-Ryder Cup, last round of qualifying, the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth. Player I was working with, he qualifies, she's level par, final round, finished like 20th. And he said to me after, is like, that's the worst I've ever felt on a golf course. Like, ever. And this guy's won 8 times on the European Tour and whatnot, a prolific winner. But that's the worst he's ever felt. But he's still on a golf course, which is, there's shit everywhere, right? You slightly miss it. You're in really thick trees. Wentworth Golf Club.
Right.
You
Very
can't
tree
see
old school.
Yeah, you can't see many other holes from each hole and whatnot. So to be able to do that again just shows that it's not the ability to you're at your A game. It's your ability to, when you're feeling terrible, that you're still able to execute. So there's a framework that I love, and there's a guy in Australia called Jonah Oliver, who's probably the person I know most in this, called ACT, and it's acceptance and commitment theory. So it's basically like to cut to the chase. It's like, okay, I've got to be aware and I've got to accept that I'm going to have these feelings, right? And I've got to be in my feeling rather than going, oh yeah, I'll repress that. It's like, no, I have this feeling. I'm shitting myself. I'm really scared. I'm nervous, whatever it might be. No problem. Absolutely. That is where you are, right? But then
Right.
it's like, then you connect to, then they have the mindfulness element of it, and you connect to the present moment, and all that stuff sort of like disappears. It's just a thought. It's not real. It comes and goes. And once you get back into the present moment, you then execute at the task that's in front of you. So irrespective of, he uses this amazing analogy, and this comes into like a lot of the training stuff that I do, where it's not, let's say you have a cup, right? And it's overflowing with water. So let's say in golf terms, you have this cup, and that's your capacity to deal with certain scenarios. He says what most people do, they start to go, well, if that cup's overflowing, we need to get rid of some stuff here. Where he's turning around and go, well, no, we need to make your cup bigger. We need to have the capacity to deal with more.
Grow,
So the only
become
way
bigger. Yeah.
the only way we deal with that is by accepting that these are the feelings. If you want to get to that high level, if you want to go play, let's say an athlete, if you want to go to the Olympics, right? And I say to you, here's the ticket to the Olympics. Do you want it? And they go, absolutely, I want to go to the Olympics. And I go, but there's some terms and conditions. So we turn over. The terms and conditions are, you're going to have poor sleep. You're going to have jet lag. You're going to be nervous. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to not want to eat. You're some certain things like that.
You're
All
never
these
going to be
things.
comfortable.
No, they're going to be part of that journey, right? Do you still want the ticket? Because it's not like trying to repress these things. And it's like, it's trying to help players. They're there. If you want to get to that high level, chatting to like Ian Highfield and Zach Parker about one of the lads, the young lad they had playing at Augusta, and they were like, "Oh, should we like downplay it?" No, don't downplay it, because he's going to get on that first tee and shit himself.
Yes, because the reality of it's going to hit him in the face. So prepare him for that reality.
100%. So layer onto him. This is the thing. This is the thing. Connect to this and execute the task that's in front of you. That to me is an element that the greats have. At the Ryder Cup, one of the players was there, 18th green. We got hammered, by the way, so we can't say much. But this was one of the golden moments in that time. Puts the ball down, makes a putt from like 8 to 10 feet, comes off. He goes, I could feel my heart bouncing out my chest. I was like shaking, putting the ball down and whatnot. Yet when people are watching it, it looks like, he's just put the ball down. He just walked up and knocked it in the hole. But it wasn't his ability in that moment to like downplay this. It's like, no, I need to function and learn to function at this level.
Yes, I've been telling a lot of the players that want to get to that level, I say, just understand that your comfort level that you think you need to get to, that with your swing, because that's, they can be comfortable on the range and hit any shot they want to. I say, your swing is there. You have developed your swing. We're not going to get it 1% better at the level it's at. Maybe a 0.1%. So let's not focus. Let's get the biggest bang for the buck for the time that we have.
Yeah.
But you need to be comfortable. I said, think of what it would be like to play in the final group on Sunday at the Masters. So what do you think you need to do to get to that level? And now it's going to be that uncomfortable because you have to cross that chasm of where you are now to where that is. And you have to do all the things in there and deal with all the things that are going to scare the shit out of you and that you're bad at. You have to face those things and your fears and your excitement, but that's part of it. As you just said,
those are the terms and conditions. If you want to get to that level, those are the terms and conditions. If you don't want it, no problem.
Right.
That's
There's
absolutely
millions of
fine as
others who
well.
didn't.
That's just the way it is. Like you're gonna have these things, and it goes to the certain things like training as well, where trying to encourage like aspiring tour players or whatnot. If they say, yeah, this is what I want to do. All right. Well, if you're going to go warm up in the morning and you're absolutely dogging it, right?
Hmm.
That's an absolute window of opportunity to go and see if you can put a score together.
Yes.
Not stay there and try and stabilize it into comfort. Go and embrace that discomfort and see, can I get it round in level one under today?
The easiest way I think for somebody out there who might not be up on what we're discussing fully, maybe they're new to golf or they're just listening to learn in their sport. But I would have to say, as a correlation or something to relate to, is with COVID, right? Everyone was afraid to get it, but and it had its detrimental effects on a number of people. I'm not going to downplay it, but
Mm,
what I'm getting at is you're afraid to get it, but once you did, and you went through that week or so of being sick, but then you had antibodies and everything else that you were good for some, depending on who you listen to, for 3 months, for a year, for three, whatever. But you went through that, and now you have a whole new level of strength,
yeah.
that you can handle things better. I guess in a very very rough analogy.
No, but it is right, and it's the same stuff that the military go through. It's being able to deal with adversity and still be able to,
Oh, could you imagine laying in surf that's 52 degrees and after
yeah,
you haven't slept for 2 days? It's just like,
yeah. I mean,
no, no
no,
thanks.
no, no, no. So again, we like in a framework that I use. So we have the green practice is like tends to be away from, it's like anything that they want to develop. This kind of, I look at it as skills, right? So I don't look at it as techniques. I look at the skills, and then techniques are part of achieving
Hmm.
that skill, right? And the skill has, you know, it has movement to it. Anything highly skilled has technique to it. We can't get away from that. So we look at that and then put like practice elements into that to help them with this. Then we have red. So red is that sort of like, okay, this is beast day. We're not going to do this too close to tournament play. It's going to be high cognitive load. There might be a number of different tasks going on. It's really quite demanding. There may be some consequences in what we're doing, but we're trying to stretch, make them uncomfortable, etc., etc. And then blue is like performance. That starts to become a little bit more kind of closer towards tournament play, even at tournaments, and that there's mixed in there, right? Because there's like you have you have performance practice, which is I have what I have. Can I accept that and just hit it type of mentality?
Hmm.
Um, we have like performance ready, so that's like, well, what am I doing on a Tuesday, Wednesday, getting ready for Thursday when the kind of the gun goes off. And then there's like performance execution. So performance execution is like during the tournament, like what are we engaged in to execute the shots that we're looking at. But again, these things have to be trained, right? And there's a lot of, we have some students who, in that performance phase, they're really good in green, they're really good in red when we challenge them, but it's that ability to just let go and detach from outcome, or just be able to kind of just accept the unknown, right, of what performance can be.
Hmm.
That's completely out of my scale sometimes, out of my pay grade. And you have to refer players to performance psychs or whatnot to just unpack some of that of why is a player not able to do that. And but there are other things that you can do in that, and that comes back to, like I said, if somebody's at a tournament and they're struggling with something, then we're looking at a level of competence, right? So we're going, right, okay, well, let's do a little bit more blocking of this, right, to get something going, and see if it kind of gets you going into Thursday. Is that great for learning? No,
No.
but we're not in a learning environment, right? We're in
Mm-mm.
a performance environment, and we're trying to get ready to go, and that's really what it is,
That's
right?
interesting that you say that you could be good in the green and the red, but not the blue. And I had that, and I got tested
The first year I played was 2001 and into 2002, and there was there was a psychologist at the gym I was training at. It was a whole medical building, and they had the ability. They put all the electrode on your head, and they're
Yeah.
going to measure your ability to get into the zone. There were two parts: can you get into it? How well can you focus? And then how well can you get out of it and shut it off? And in golf, obviously, you're into it for your pre-shot routine, and you hit the ball, and then you're supposed to shut it down and get out of it while you go to the next shot. Well, I very fortunately was off the charts in ability to focus. He said, "You're maxing it out." He said, "You're up there with the best of the Olympians that we've tested." He said, "Now let's do your ability to shut it off." And I thought I killed that too. And he said, we got done with it. I said, how'd I do? He said, we're supposed to shut it off this time. We're not supposed to stay focused. I said, I did. He said, no, no, you didn't.
You were basically running out of juice, were you?
Yes.
Like,
And if you looked at my tournament rounds back then, I'd shoot a couple good rounds and then a terrible round. It was just, my brain was fried. It didn't know how to shut itself down.
And again, that's cognitive load, right? So that's what we're talking about. We're in, to periodize skill, all right, like to play well in tournament. We're trying to manage that cognitive load with golfers the way they are right now and how well they're trained. It's less physical, I have to say. It's not like they're going to be overly fatigued physically.
Mm-hmm.
There may be some weaknesses muscular, but that's again like work in progress. But it's managing that load that they're getting. And again, it goes back to like when I see it, I don't know whether it's right, but when I see a lot of kind of instruction going on at a tournament, that's just adding to cognitive load.
Yes.
And it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, that doesn't make sense doesn't mean, to me, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just, I need to figure out whether there's better ways of doing it or not.
Yeah, and
that,
if you look at Tiger over the course of his career, for the most part, when he let's take the majors as the example, especially, he's rarely, if ever, working on anything at the major, and it didn't matter when he was with Butch, with Hank, or with Sean, or Chris, or well, now he really doesn't have anybody. But and then if you to make that even more, when he gets there, he's only playing 9 holes a day, so he's in like full. He's doing enough to keep his mind sharp, but he's in like full rest mode early in the week.
Yeah,
because he knows how much energy it's going to pull out of him, and it's going to amplify each round.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's. I don't know what he was like early on in his career. I don't know, but in 2006, the golf course I was at called the Grove. We hosted a WGC, and it was just after the Ryder Cup, right? And the Ryder Cup's a pretty tough week. There's a lot going on and whatnot. A lot of golf being played and whatnot. And he kind of, I think the Ryder Cup might have been in Ireland. And he then came play WGC, and he flew in on a Monday. Had to go and do like a Nike day or an EA Sports day or something like that. And then Tuesday, people, the gates open at 8, and people like rushing up to me, like people I know, going, "Where is he? Is he on the golf course? What?" Like, I was like, I haven't seen him. Like, I don't know. He's like, "Oh, you're bullshitting me." Like, I said, "No, I'm not. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen him today." And I was chatting to the front house manager, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I haven't seen him. I think he's just rested in his room. Didn't see him the whole of Tuesday, right? Just completely rested. Went to the gym, I think, later on. And then Wednesday morning, he was out, first light, go. Played 9 holes. I was privileged to walk inside the ropes with him, which was absolutely amazing. I've never seen somebody have so much control over a golf ball ever, like different flights, shapes, just a complete artist in what he was trying to do with the golf shot. And he played 18 holes, back, rested, shoots 22 under for the tournament, wins it by 7, and it was like a real kind of moment for me where I was like, wow, like just to be able to go and say, I'm not going to do anything on Tuesday. It's actually more detrimental if I do something on that Tuesday. I'm tired. I'm just going to rest and put value, into that during a tournament. That even comes down to people like reflecting after a round. It's like going, oh yeah, I just need to go and practice. Why?
Yeah. For what?
Like
You're not going to
why?
fix it.
No, just go and get some rest.
Well, that's what I'm doing with some of the better players I have now. It's like, well, I didn't hit it good. It's like, look, they worked on their swing. We did whatever we had to do over the winter. It's like something inside you knows where that is.
Yeah,
If you go work harder at it, you're going to tire yourself out, and it's not going to be able to go find that. So go shut it down, and you'll be surprised it will come back to you. So
absolutely.
let's work on getting your internal rhythm, clock, everything else back on its track. And when that happens, your swing, which is what you're always worried about, is going to come back. So like a lot of practice I'll have with scratch to even the guys coming out of college or girls or playing pro at lower pro levels is like, let's work on your wedge game. Let's work on
Yeah,
your pitching. Let's work on, because those that from putting to wedge game, controlled wedges, their tempo, rhythm, and everything needs to be in check, right?
mm.
Because that's what that largely is based on, tempo, rhythm, so you can hit the
Yeah,
distance and spin you want. And I say, if your swing gets off in the golf course, get back to focusing on that, because that tempo and rhythm will bleed over and your full swing will come back, and then you're off and running again. But how do you manage your game in that time? How do you get it back on track so that it's not nine, it's not 2 rounds, it's maybe 9 holes, and then we go from 9 holes to 3 holes as you
yeah.
progress. That's how you keep your bad rounds at 72, like that fella you had at
I
Wentworth.
think I think it's really 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 good advice. And if you look at the stuff that the research that Dr. Debbie Cruz has done at in Arizona, and she looked at it and went, there's like 3 layers to it, right? So players are at their best when they are target feel oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when you play your best. Layer two would be what you're talking about there, like tempo, something quite abstract and whatnot, rhythm, that's a balance, that type of focus. Level three is some form of like technical intervention. And that's like the last chance saloon where you're not going to play great golf if you're in that sort of space thinking about over controlling your mechanics when you're playing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fine to have like feels or like shots that you're trying to hit and whatnot, just to kind of get it round and hit it into like good spots and whatnot. No problem with that. That's the armory that you have on that particular day. And that's just, again, just managing what you have. And I think that's where great players have the ability to do that. No matter what, where they're at, they know how to kind of switch in and out of these kind of different different areas to be able to get it round the golf course, and then just shut it down and come back, and the next day is completely fresh. We're not the same human being. It's not the same golf course. The flags are different and whatnot. It's a brand new day, and see where that kind of gets you.
Well, I remember when Jason Day, because Colin Swatton lives
Yeah,
over in Belfair, and when Jason was winning tournaments, and then he was getting into those final groups in major after major, and he just couldn't quite get over that hump. And then I remember someone asking either Colin or Jason in an interview, said, what was it that got you over the hump? And he said, I finally got comfortable being uncomfortable all the time,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
that's a huge
And
thing.
just dealing with it, and
Yes.
it's like, and I think that is a big thing with aspiring tour players, is that they're always searching for comfort, right? Rather than just accepting what you said, accepting the uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you navigate? Because there's a big difference between driving a Formula One or a Daytona car around a racetrack in an oval and then doing it with 25 other cars. You're not
Yeah,
always accelerating. And
yeah,
you're people cutting in front of you. How do you stop? How do you draft? How do
yeah,
you do all these different
absolutely.
things? One thing I want to ask you, because it's been, and Ian and I talked about this in the past quite a bit. And it seems to be a topic. Ian's gone back and forth a little bit with Scott Fawcett, and I know you had a comment on Scott, because Scott's very practice oriented in block practice, and you guys are more the variable. Um, how do you? My thing is, not this argument, but there's a number of things in golf. Like, is it straight back, straight through, or is it arced in your putting stroke, or is it this? And it usually comes down to, well, depends. What does
Yeah, it does.
what
Yeah,
does the golfer need? So can you just speak a little bit to the
yeah.
different
A
practices?
lot of it is just general semantics. To be honest, like I still don't think people know what like blocked and random are orders of practice, right? They're
Hmm.
not like, and we have serial in between, right? So you go, so a block is a block of five. That's a blocked environment trying to do something that is relatively similar,
Or
right? And then you
for the listener, a hardcore block practice would be they're hitting a whole bucket of balls off a flat surface with the same club, or might change clubs now and again, but they're hitting, let's say, 100 to 200 balls from the same spot to the same target with the same club, working
see
on the
that to
same thing.
me, that's not block, that's
Okay.
massing, and that's the difference, right? So massing of practice of trying to do the same thing over again with the same club off the same lie, that to me has zero. I just don't see that having
Nothing gets
any
absorbed,
benefit, huh?
right? Nothing gets absorbed in the brain. There's
No,
no
I just
adaptation.
don't see that having a benefit. I just don't. I don't know what. First of all, we don't make the same movement over and over
Mm-mm.
again. It's a if you're not resetting after every shot, I just, like I said, it does, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
But a block of, or an order could be, right. I hit a block of 10 um, 7-irons to, and this is kind of more within skill variability, but it's a block of 10, right? So I go to that flag, to that flag, to that flag, and then I come back around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a block of 10, same club, but it's within skill. It's variable because you're hitting it to three different targets,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the variability is in the same club, different shots, but the order is in a block.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Very much. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then you've got serial. So serial would be more like golf is played, right? So it's more like it's in a very, very predetermined order, and you'd hit one shot there, then you'd hit one shot there, and then you'd hit one shot there. So you could do this. This is more within skill variability. So you go, I hit a driver down there, and then I'm going to hit an iron shot down the same line to set to a similar target, and then I'm going to hit the driver again, right? So that's going to be a serial order that's predetermined, but it's just one shot, basically. So the
Okay.
order is serial of practice. It's, and then the variability element is between skill. So it's two different skills going on. So driver skill, approach play skill, right?
Right.
Then random is there's no order to it. So it's like, oh, you hit a pitch shot to there, a 7-iron to there, hit this to there. So random has some learning benefits to it. To me, like if you're trying to learn something from a performance standpoint, random practice makes no sense because actually golf is not played like in a random order. It's played in a very, very serial order.
Yeah.
So
Driver, iron, wedge, or putter.
yeah.
Yeah.
So actually what we're looking at when people are talking about blocked and random, it's like, yeah, but I could have a blocked environment between within skill, or with it like within between skill variability. So it's like it's somewhat of a mute point, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Mate, Scott has sent me, when I've had when I've challenged this again. It's relative to, if I'm gonna, let's say I'm at a tournament and somebody's like struggling with their stock fade off we've been out on the golf course and I've seen that, I might go, right, okay, well, what we're going to do, we're going to go blocks of five, and we're going to go um, within skill. So you're going to hit 5 tee shots, 5 approach shots with a long iron, 5 approach shots with a with a 7-iron or whatever, and that's going to be in a pretty similar way. But the element is trying to get that stock shot kind of coming back, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
blocks of whatnot. That's fine with me because that has rationale to why you're doing it. And I generally don't think people really understand what you said. I think people think blocked practice is massing of practice, where it's just on a one lie, drag, hit, drag, hit, drag, hit. Because Scott has even sent me videos of like certain practice things. It's not block practice, Pete. You know what he's doing.
So it's a combination of the randomized serial with a block out. It's how you maneuver each of those elements within the practice based off what any individual needs at a particular time.
Yeah. So like I said, blocking you can block something, right? So I could go, okay, I have a block of 5 balls, right? So I go 5, 5, 5. So 15 shots, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they're blocks of 5. That's the order of what I'm going to do. I'm then going to take a 7-iron, right, in that first block, and I'm going to hit a draw, hit a fade, hit a low, hit a high, hit a medium one. That's within skill. So it's the same kind of like club and whatnot, but you're moving within the skill of that same club. But
Right.
it's in a blocked order. People wouldn't think that that's blocked, right? I'm telling
Right.
you now.
They would, yeah, 99 out of 100 would say that's a variable practice.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's within skill variability. So within the block, there's variability in there. So there's
Mm-hmm.
learning that can be done within that block.
Makes total
So,
sense to me.
right? So if I then go, all right, so I'm now going to bridge the gap, and we're going to go. So let's say we're looking at contextual interference. Contextual interference is very random, right? It's like going do that shot, that shot, that shot in all different, like there's no real order to how it's done. It's just whatever. You can use a dice to do this. That has some learning, like I said, some learning benefits because you're always moving to a different thing all the time.
Yeah. If you go
The most
around a green, take 2 handfuls of balls, throw them up in the air wherever they land. You're going to chip those to the
to
green.
that flag, and then you might roll the dice so it's to that flag,
Right.
or you need to hit a low one to this one, you need to hit a high one to this one. There's no order. It's completely a random order. But you could have a random order, right? And then you could go, that's within skill, right? So it's the same kind of shots around the green. So you're not changing club or anything. So it's within skill variability, but it's in a completely random order.
Do you find that there's one that works better than the other, or is it just individually driven at a particular time?
I think that it's I would honestly say I very rarely go to complete random if I'm training, if I'm honest. Because I look at the behavior of training as well, right? So I'm looking at what's going to give us the what's going to give us our benefit when we're transferring this to a golf course. So I
Mm-hmm.
look at it going at, well, golf is played in a very serial order. That's not going to change. I'm not going to hit putter off the tee, right? And then do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's a very very sequential serial order of how. So when if I'm on the range, right, and I'll do a trackman something, right? I'll set up our own. So we'll go performance serial, hit a tee shot into a corridor, hit an approach shot into a corridor. Wherever that ends up, we're going to go chip or we're going to go putt, right? So we walk to the thing. That to me has more behavioral benefits to golf than completely random. Now, if you want to, let's say you wanted to, and this is the difference between performance environment and a learning environment. So if I really wanted to learn something like a movement or whatnot, I would probably highlight a specific area. Okay, this is the type of shot, but I'm going to randomize the order and I'm going to have, let's say in 10 shots, we're going to have 3 of those shots, but it's completely jumbled up. So you always have to go in, out, and you have to recall and be able to play that shot. That to me would be really, really good learning as an environment.
When you do that, if you hit random shots, like I will have students hit fade, straight, draw, or vice versa, or alter trajectory, but I usually have them go back instead of jumping one. So instead of going from draw to fade, I'll have them go from draw to straight back to fade, so that there's not a jumping. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. So again, what you're talking about there, that's called within skill variability. So if they're using the same club, right,
Mm-hmm.
and hitting these different shots, that's variability within the same sort of parameters. So the scalable parameters of movement. Now randomness would be if you said, if you were in that environment with them and you go, okay, hit me this shot, go and hit a putt. Hit me this shot, go and hit a tee shot. Hit
Okay.
me this shot, go and hit another chip shot. So they don't know what the order is. It's completely
Chaos.
random in its order. So the skill is what you're doing, right? So it's like, so simplest thing to look at is go between skill, or let's say within skill. Those are the two things. So within skill variability and between skill variability. So within skill, 7-iron, fade, straight, draw.
Okay.
Right? Between skill variability, tee shot, fade, iron shot, draw, pitch, putt.
All right, that makes perfect sense.
So again, that's the skill component. Blocked, serial, random. It's just the order that you do it.
All right, that gives a lot of clarification. And for amateurs out there, might not have a full understanding, but I know a lot of the coaches will.
Yeah, and that I've had this kind of battle as well, and I like I said, I think people think that blocking is something different than what it actually is.
It's an actual part of the others.
Yes, it's
It's in
just
the
the
family.
order. It's just the order that you do something in. That is it. So I could hit, let's say, a block of 10 shots, and I'm just working on a fade, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I could do that with 10 different, let's 5 different clubs on a loop, but the block is the same because I'm working on the same thing, basically. So it's blocked within skill. So it's the same skill.
Yeah, that's good. That's awesome.
It's like, and that's why I think that it's just this, like I said, this, like the extreme version of randomness is a thing from like a differential learning from Scholholm in Germany. Like this is like so off the charts random. This is like standing on one leg, hitting it the other way. The like real extreme randomness of there's nothing to do with the sport at
Mm-hmm.
all. It's just all over the place. That, and again, like I said, in golf, I think that's quite extreme. I don't. I would say I very rarely go there, to be quite honest.
Yeah,
To that extreme randomness.
one thing that I find interesting, and it would have to be a talk with somebody like Doc Brett McCabe or somebody in that field, is how does the way that somebody's perspective is on something. Like let's say, and I've had this discussion with a few people who had worked with Tiger, and I say, if you look at Tiger post his dad's passing, right? Because his dad provided a tremendous amount of structure for his entire life. And I don't know this for sure. I'm just looking at it as outsider in the industry, saying this is what I'm seeing. When his dad passed, as with anybody, he didn't have that structure. And if you look at, not that he selected teachers because they were extremely structured, but I think what he internally might have been looking for was some structure in his life. And he went like Sean Foley was at that time was a very, very structured technical teacher. I think
Yeah.
maybe that's why he gravitated towards him. But as he self-developed from his dad's passing, and he grew on his own, that slowly faded away. Now, whether that had to do with he and Sean separating, I have no idea. I'm just saying, as a person, whatever's going on inside of a person and what they need, maybe their perspective is based off, they might want or gravitate towards that type of teacher and or that type of practice. So I would be curious if Tiger's practice revolved around a lot of block, as we just talked about, as opposed to
I mean,
random.
basically, Rory has said he's seen Tiger practice. I think I can't remember where he said it, but he said it's the most unstructured practice he's ever seen in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just because if we look at Tiger, right, it'd be interesting to speak to him, but from the outside looking in, values and philosophy like are very, very strong, like to everybody, right?
Right. Yep.
Our values in life and how our philosophies are. So if Tiger Woods is would for me would be an artist, right? Play to win type of character.
Mm-hmm.
So Tiger Woods is artistic in nature in the way that he sees shots and plays shots and so on and so forth. But he's play to win when he gets into a tournament. He's quite happy having an outcome thing that he's charging towards. He has a score in mind of what he's gonna of how he can get around this golf course, right? Whereas you go looking at somebody like Seve back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
much more of a artist, play to play type of character, just hitting everything in the moment of just hitting that shot.
That's
Like
for
there's
sure.
no, yeah, like there's no, like he's not thinking of like getting to anywhere. It's like it's just this shot,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to do that the best that I can, type of thing. Then you've got somebody like maybe like um when I look at Justin Thomas now, I think Tiger's had a big influence on Justin, right?
Yeah,
Where
I
in the
would
sense
agree.
of like, I think he's gone more artistic, probably one of the best shot makers we have in the game today.
Yep.
But he's still a play to win type of character. He's quite happy on social media, putting out his goals and his aspirations and whatnot. He's like, that's where I'm going,
Yeah, I think that
type
was
of scenario.
never more evident than in the Players Championship
Yeah,
and that shot on 16 where he slung hooked that driver all the way around the corner.
yeah.
And there's like, how many people would even try that shot?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then you might have somebody who's, I don't know, like a Matt Wallace, for example, like a mechanic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very much sort of like very regimented in, this is how I swing the golf club type of thing. But he's still a play to win type of character, right? Then you might have again, I'm just hypothesizing here. You may have like Victor Hovland might be more mechanic play to play. He does a lot of some mechanical work on his game and that's certain things there with Jeff. But when he gets out there into battle, it's just like hitting shots after shots after
Mm-hmm.
shots after shots. He's not thinking about winning a golf tournament. He's just hitting shots. So when you understand the individual and what their values are within the game, it's again that will influence how they practice, how they play, how they schedule what they're doing. And as long as they live by that, then they're going to be okay. It's when they start to go into the areas of, like, let's say Tiger goes from an artist value into trying to be a mechanic. It's just not going to work.
Not no
You
oil.
know?
It's definitely oil and water.
Yeah.
And unfairly, Sean caught a lot of flack from a lot of critics that his theories didn't work or they didn't do this. It's like, I sat there watching this, like, well, it just doesn't match. I don't see what Tiger has done his career or the way that he is matching with being so overly structured and mechanical. And that's not a knock on anybody. That's just the way Sean might have been then and the way he was teaching and the difference in he and Tiger.
But Foles has even said, right? I mean, he's very, very open about it. He would do things completely
Yes,
different. Like,
I give Sean all the credit in the world because and again, as we said, looking from 10,000 feet away, that he has evolved his teaching and coaching and his approach, and what he's done with Lydia, I think he has
yeah,
it has been phenomenal. And I give all the credit in the world to Sean. He didn't sit there and say, well, this works and this is the way it has to be, and I'm going to keep pushing this on somebody, and I'm going to find someone
Yeah,
who it works
pushing
with.
this doctor in of like, you
Yes,
have to do this, you know?
I'm sure there was some moments where he looked inside and said, okay, I need to develop some better skills and to make myself better and to give more value to the people I'm working with.
But I mean, I've had it recently where I walked away from what could have been a very like lucrative relationship with a really good player, but I couldn't, I didn't resonate with, I see the game in a certain way, right? I have my biases.
Mm-hmm.
And as a coach, I'm not sure it's always a good thing because I will gravitate to some players and not to others, right? So let's say we have, I'll go an ecological approach, right? Where you see the environment, flags over there, hole is, the topography is there. I'm going to hit the shots relative to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's taking the environment and that's informing the action. Okay. So that's an artist. A mechanic is very much sort of feed forward. If I swing it like this, I hit it from A to B. There's not much shape going on. It's like there to there.
Right.
Okay. Now, in that framework, in that individual's philosophy, you go, okay, well then you have, if that's feed forward of like I swing it like this, it produces this, versus feedback, that's the whole. I'm going to hit that shot for that environment. A mechanic, I'm going, oh, right, I don't know how to deal with that. So I stepped away from a mechanic because I didn't think I could help him, because I didn't know how to help him.
Yeah, there would be. I always explain it as one of you is speaking Spanish and one of you is speaking French,
And the thing
it's
what
not going to be
happened was, in that relationship, I felt I was causing cognitive dissonance,
mm-hmm.
whereas I'm trying to show him something different to what his beliefs are, and if I show him hard enough, there's a conflict,
Right.
right? And then all of a sudden I'm more of a problem than I am a solution. So I reflected on this on a few flights and whatnot. I had to step away from that
There's a
relationship.
lot of people who wouldn't have.
Probably not, no. But I thought ethically it was the right thing to do because I didn't feel I had the right tools at that time. Now I've reflected on it, I've thought about it, I've unpacked it. And if that individual came my way now, I would definitely have more tools to do that,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Because
it probably got you to go learn how do I work with somebody who's like this, even if I'm not that type of
and it
person.
was Pete, it was a proper smack in the face, like because like you think, oh, you're doing a lot of good work and stuff like that, and you're thinking, oh yeah, I kind of have all this figured out and whatnot, and then this person comes like smack in the face. The mirror has to go up. You have to look at yourself fucking hard in what you're doing,
Right.
right? And then you have to go, if there's an element of like of care, which there always is as a
Mm-hmm.
coach, you kind of like you give a lot, right? You have to go away and look at that. If you're turning around and going, oh no, that's not for me, it was his fault and whatnot,
Right.
that's complete, that's just rubbish.
Or the
You
other one is,
have
well,
to.
I just can't help him. That's not the way I am. Well, that doesn't that leads you down to the same destination, nowhere.
Yeah, and how small do you want your group of players that you can work with to be? Like if you could only work
You
with
pigeonhole yourself.
X, like there's certain players that I work, and I'm very, very privileged to work with them, and they put trust in me, and I'm very grateful for that. And they're really good players, but I connect with them because they see the world the same way as I see the world, and that's fine, right? And that's like really kind of nourishing, and it's like it just makes sense. But we have to be able to adapt to the individual that's in front of us. So when that thing came to me and that scenario came to me, I had to look at myself in the mirror and start to figure some stuff out. And that to me is the ethically right thing to do. Ethically, I had to step away because I was causing more damage than providing any form of help. And then I had to look and say, well, if this happens again, what is who is this individual and how do I help them?
Do you think at some point, if given enough time, that a coach could develop, if they gravitate towards one, or let's say they're born a certain way, that's their predisposition to see things artistically, as you describe. Do you think if given enough time and enough skill development that they can develop the uh, more regimented way, and be able to help all, or where they become more equal, or but they will always have a tendency to lean towards the more artistic versus analytical?
Yeah, I think that I think you have to be very aware as a coach. I don't think you can just go into something completely blinkered because and shut off, because then you're always going to go towards your bias,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think at the start of a relationship is key for everything, is to know who that individual is that's in front of you, how they're wired, and can you, like, I have the things where if I get on well with the individual and I can spend time with them, then I can adapt and I can help them, right? If I don't get on with them, or I don't like the individual, like not on a golfing level, but on a personal level, I'm not going to waste my time. Like I can't. You spend a lot of time away from home and being on the road. You need to be able to hang out with somebody that you're able to get on
Right.
with,
Yep.
right, and enjoy it in some ways. And they're two different things. So if I get on with them on an individual standpoint, we can have a bit of banter or crack or whatever it might be. Um, but the adaptability, we ask the players to be adaptable in what they do, but we have to be adaptable too as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just be like, okay, this is me here, and anything over here is wrong. We have to be able to go, okay, we can see the whole world here. How do I help that individual? How do I help that individual? And that to me takes time. And if it's against your bias, you have to be very aware and very conscious of that.
Even my own coaching, I was teaching. I don't know if you remember that Golfers Career College. I was
Yeah,
teaching there for
yeah.
a little while, and in that era, that was back at what, 2009 or 10, when the science, so to speak, of our industry was really coming out to the masses. You know, the TrackMan was, now it was out there. It wasn't just something that was being shown or trying to grow. It was already out. People knew about it, and now it was accelerating. And all the measuring devices, and science and so forth. And as I was learning those things and everything else, the knock from some of the students at the school and some of my students in general was, well, you're just too much of a structured coach. You're too scientific. And my whole life I had never been that. And I said,
Yeah.
well, okay, but if you're learning something, you're going to tend to gravitate that way. And then you kind of, I think you filter back to the way you are. And now you're more developed, you're smarter, you're more well-rounded. But I had that criticism myself for a couple of years as I was learning those things.
It's tough though, right? When
It
somebody
is.
gives you, but I think those tough moments are the best thing that ever happens to, like, well, I think is the best thing that ever happens when somebody, a friend of mine calls it cut, bleed, and bandage, right? So somebody literally cuts you, like, and like, woof,
Hmm.
that's, they're holding the mirror up and whatnot. Then they let you kind of suffer a little bit in that sense of like, well, you need to go away and think about this a little bit. I'm not going to try and help you here. You need to go and digest that. And
Right.
when you've come up with some valid, reasons and whatnot, because that what you've done there is bullshit. It just doesn't stack up in under any research or whatnot. So why are you doing it? Go away, think about it, bleed a little bit, and then I'll help you kind of bandage it up
Well,
a
I
little bit.
was I was actually getting it from both sides. So from the students, I was getting it that you're too technical, and then from the instructors who were saying that this, and I'm not knocking any of these advice. They say it's going to revolutionize teaching, and I would say yes. As looking back, it has it in some way, shape, and form. But I'm like, it's not going to. It's the easiest way for me to explain it to those listening. It's like an MRI machine. It tells you what's happening, but if you don't know how to interpret it, you can do more damage than you can help somebody. So my
Yeah.
comment on a panel one time was it's equivalent of a modern day abacus in that it's, yes, it's scientific and it gives a measurement, but that's about it. If the person doesn't know what they're talking about. And so I was catching hell from our side of the industry, but you're just don't want to adapt and this and that. And I was catching hell from the students like, well, you're too technical. It's like,
Yeah.
so I say, I must be doing something right if I'm getting it from both sides.
Yeah. And I do think that as well. You know, at this moment in time, like I'm discussing. I want to find out some things, right? So I'm going down the road of doing a professional doctorate, and it's different to a PhD. It's the same layer as a PhD, but it's more from practice backwards, right? So I'll look at my experience in the industry and we'll track it back, whereas a PhD is much more bringing something novel through research
Mm-hmm.
into, and the PhDs that I've seen and some research don't have any practicality to it, right? It's very hard to translate into the practical world where
Right.
I'm looking at things and going, well, I want to be able to find out a little bit more about what's going on and whatnot, and try and improve things through things this way. But the reality of that is it's going to annoy some people, right? It's going to because
Supposed to.
yeah, because you're challenging. And when you challenge the paradigm of this is how we've always done it, and I'm comfortable doing it this way, you're always going to get pushback. Why? Because they perceive it as a threat. It's nothing personal. It's just that you're challenging what they do. So I have a good friend out on tour, swing guy, technical guy, really, really open, right? Fallen down like things of being very, okay, you swing it like this, quite systemized. And we just hang out, right? And we talk. And I'm like, yeah, but what about this player? Is that a system? Well, no. What does he do well? Well, he does this, this, and this. But does he do that? No, he doesn't do that. Well, it's not a system then. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's a system, everybody does it the same way, and you stack it up. The moment one or two people do something different, it's not a system anymore.
No, it blows it out of the water.
Yeah. So that's golf, right? There is no
Life,
system.
even more so,
Yeah.
bigger picture, life. And I've had,
There's
I
no.
mean, Dr. Will Wu was on, we had a lot of good discussion. Dr. Scott Lynn was on. And the thing that I talked about them with, because the one thing this podcast has done for me, fortunately, is, I mean, how many people I get to talk to who are experts in their field who are using the things at the highest level. And the message that gets trickled down to, let's say, the assistant in the golf shop who wants to be a coach or teacher, that message gets misconstrued and twisted all the way down, not purposely, but just human nature.
Yeah.
And what we talked about was that most of the people who are using the scientific devices for measuring, they're not using it at the level of, let's say, every swing or every other swing that the way that the assistant in the pro shop thinks that they have to use it. They're
Mm.
using it. They have their ideas. They have their theories. They're very well developed in their knowledge and their skill of coaching, and they have their theories. And when they're working with a student, they might do a baseline check with the devices, and then they'll implement what they think needs to be implemented. And then later on, they will check again to see what the difference is. That's the extent that they're using it, where the masses
Yeah.
are thinking, no, you have to use it all the time, when it's complete opposite. If there's
Yeah.
anything that this podcast has shown, it's that, right?
Yeah.
Science is a great thing if used correctly, but it's not the only thing. There has to be a wide array of things to be used.
And it's I love speaking to people about certain things, and I remember you go down these things, you hear something, and you go, "There's a guy called Mark Latache or something like that," and I heard about him through. I mean, he's very well read on and researched on motor control and motor learning. John Hardesty said you need to check this guy. I was like, okay, brilliant. And made a really really poignant comment. He goes, golf is not biomechanics; it's motor control and motor learning. And I'm like, whoa, that's a big statement right there,
Yeah, it's
right?
going to
Because of
slap a
what,
lot of people upside the head.
yeah, because what's going on. I then went to somebody and said, oh, this is what I've heard. What is your thoughts? Why is it that? Why is it not game concept? And I'm like, Oh my God. Like, and then I'm thinking, holy, like it's a game, right? Do all these things have value to it? Yes, they do, but
Mhm.
it's still a game, right? So if you go looking at a golf swing to enhance the game, there's motor control, motor learning elements to it, to any form of movement. Nope, absolutely. To do with movement, is there some biomechanical information you can extract from forces, torques, you know, whatever the body is doing? Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But it still should be coming round to how is that going to influence the game?
Yeah, how's it going to improve the player? Right?
And
I
if
mean,
it's not, if it's if and there's always that. I always remember um, somebody again. We deep conversation. He's quite a philosophical guy, and he just sits back there. He's like a bit like a Buddha, right? He just sits there. He doesn't really say too much. A good friend of mine now, and I was like, "What about this? What about that? Oh, I did this today. I did this. Do you think that's really good?" He goes, "I don't know." I said, "What do you mean you don't know?" He goes, "I don't know. I just don't know. It could be. It could be not." And it's like, he says, have one thought process when you do things. There's always a positive and there's always a negative. So what's the at cost element? So you're going to give some intervention, but there's always going to be a cost.
mhm.
Always. So how big is that cost? So if you have somebody who is struggling with their putting, right? And you go and give them more technical information, you could be going to the point of going, at what cost? That could be a huge cost, right? You might need to go completely the other way with that individual and go, yeah, we just need to go like Brad Faxon on here and just kind of react a bit more, free things up a little bit more, then jump back a little bit. So there's always that element of like, yeah, we can't be, we act so freaking sure all the time, like we have the answers, and we just don't.
Right.
We're making our best judgment or like advice that we have at that time. We're all doing the best job we possibly can. That is the end of it. I'm sure of that. That's the one thing I am sure of in the industry of golf coaches and whatnot. We're a very caring bunch. We always want to do the
That is a
best
common denominator. I agree.
by our students, right? And we give them the best information we have at that time with the knowledge we have, right? That is
Mhm.
absolute gospel. There's nothing against that, but there's always going to be a cost, and there's going to be a benefit as well. And it's where those kind of things weigh up. We don't have any guarantees at all.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson talks about that. The Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
I
he's
don't know if you follow him,
brilliant.
but if you're going to do something, you're giving up something else. So you got
Yeah,
to weigh that dilemma. Is it worth it to you to have a pleasurable experience later on that you're going to give up time from your family or your free time or something now to
yeah.
have a gain later on? It,
And that's what makes it. I'm sure it's part of why you do this podcast as well. It's why I read. It's why I'm going, contemplating, doing some academic research as well. It's not for anything other than I don't want solutions and I don't want exact answers. I'm just trying to fill up my pool of information, my knowledge, my wisdom, however you want to term it. So when somebody comes to me and they want some guidance, I can just weigh it up,
mhm.
right? And I can make a better judgment or better call on what I think is a better intervention or help for that individual. If I'm just seeing it one way, it's going to alienate so many people, and I just don't want that to
Well,
happen.
I think of all the technology in the last 20 years that's been integrated into golf, that it's bringing us back to where we started from, and that the one thing that it's shown without a doubt is that everybody's different and not
And we're human
and we're
beings.
human beings, and there is not just if you do this thing then it'll result in this thing and then this thing will result in this thing. That's not how it works.
It just doesn't work like that,
Mm-mm.
does it?
Nothing
It
in life.
really doesn't.
I mean, my dad used to always tell me, he said, you don't see any straight lines in nature, do you?
No.
I was like, that's a good point.
And that's a lovely thing. As I think, I was chatting to a professor recently, and I was just challenging the fact of we want things to make sense, don't we? We want and for us, A, B, C, D makes sense, right? That just it is the linear process. If I do that, then I move to that, I move to that, move to that, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Fitz and Posner model of motor learning, right, is A, B, C. But the world is not like that.
Mm-mm.
It's absolutely non-linear. And we are an absolute complex organism, right, that has multitude of experiences and things going on from the past, in the present, and where we think the future's going, how our body's able to move, how our brain sees the world. All these things tie into how we're going to actually do and play the game of golf. We can't just go, oh, if you do this, you do this, do this, you're going to do this. No. And anybody that says that, I'm like, dude,
Run.
I'm walking away
Get
from
away
you,
from them.
man, because we're going to have a fallout here. And if I went for a lesson in anything and somebody said, do this, do this, do this, and you're going to do this, I'm out because I
Mm-hmm.
just don't see it that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I don't know how you see things like that, but I mean, you kind of touched
even
on
some
there that,
doctors who I know who are exceptional at what they do. One comes, Dr. Michael Hollis has been on the show, and um, I asked him about the big rage lately has been drink your body weight in ounces of water or something, half your body, depending on who you ask, right? And I asked him, I said, is that true, or should you drink 8 ounces, 8 ounce glasses a day? And he says, depends. And I'm like, depends on what? And he said, well, it depends on if your body needs it or not. You know,
yeah,
if you go drinking, if you're a 100 or 200 pound man, I don't know the conversion to kilos that I think you got the metric system. Um, but if you go drinking 200 ounces of water a day, you're going to flush your system of all the vitamins and minerals and everything else. And now what are you left with? But you can say, oh, well, I'm drinking
same with
my
you,
body weight.
like where you, I mean, where you live and where I lived for 2 years, and again, I loved it there. When the humidity gets up, right,
Mm-hmm.
your body is not doesn't need liquid; it needs salt,
Right.
right, because of the sweat. So it's more electrolytes. If you just keep drinking water, you are going to flush your system of all the
Then you're really going to
nutrients
be in
that it
trouble.
has. Oh, big trouble. Yeah, hospitalization potentially.
Right.
Stuff like that.
And I mean, even using the fitness industry as an example, I say, okay, look at like someone like Maoris who eat a lot of tubers and plants and some protein and hardly any fat. And then you go to someone like the Inuits who eat almost 80-90% whale meat and blubber. And
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, they're both healthy and they both eat off the land, but you could not flip flop them and say you eat this and you're going to be healthy. It's not how it works. You know, someone could, as we used Sean earlier, as someone who would be a technical teacher, someone would go to him and flourish. Justin Rose, a prime example. Justin seems to be a more
they
mechanical
just
person. They
fit, right?
fit perfect.
Yeah.
But if you were to take Bubba Watson and say you're
Oh,
gonna work with Sean Foley, you might not ever hear of Bubba Watson again.
100%. 100%. Unless Sean could adapt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless Sean could go, all right, yeah, this is the person. And I think that comes with time, right? As well.
Right.
I think this is potentially why, you know, I think Butch Harmon has a lot of other qualities than his technical ability, right? I think
I
there's,
think Butch's best feature is his ability to that it's not that he's a great X's and O's. It's that he's able to make the golfer think and know that they're going to play well. You know, if you ever
yeah,
listen to Butch at a tournament, he's like, "Oh, you've been working with so and so." He's like, "Oh man, they're hitting it better than I've ever seen them hit it." I mean, he's saying on worldwide television. And what's that do to the golfer? It's like, wow, Butch
yeah.
Harmon's saying I'm hitting it better than ever.
And he always talks about, which I like, he talks about shots, doesn't he? Like he
Mm-hmm.
talks about like, even when Tiger went, he goes, "Oh, hit me this. What would you do if you had this shot to that flag, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And Tiger goes, "I don't have that shot," you know. And Butch is like, "Okay, well, it's linked to that, so that has very high context because then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we can see that. So when you get onto a golf course and you have this particular situation, this flag, then all of a sudden, if you're watching that individual play, you can see if those behaviors are actually transferring." And that to me is the essence of coaching at high performance.
Yeah, I
It's like,
think Butch gets touted for his mechanical when that's not his best feature, and he's probably
no,
fine with everybody thinking that because he knows and his students know what his best quality is, and he's got a lot of them.
yeah, big time, big time.
Let me ask you a couple of things that have
Yeah,
seemed to be going on. I see them on chats or discussions, and they don't get mean or anything, but the discussion about talent versus skill. And my argument, well, first, when I got into one of those discussions, it was, well, first of all, give me the definition of what talent is, because if we don't have an agreement on that, then, and mine was, if someone's physically predisposed to have it, that would be a talent. Somebody who's 7 feet in basketball, or someone has fast twitch muscles like Usain Bolt, right? I can practice as much as I want. I'm never going to run as fast as Usain Bolt.
yeah,
But skill acquisition, which is a lot of what we've been talking about today, versus talent. What is your opinion or thoughts on that?
yeah. I think you know, I think there's a few things like you see a list of certain things that go around saying none of these things need talent, right? Like turning up on
Right,
time.
showing up on time and being
These
respectful, and yeah.
that to me is part of talent, right? I think to be able to have those things, that is probably talent. When you see the physical element of it, right, of like somebody who is extremely gifted at something, right, at a young age, that is what it is. It's a gift that they have. They have certain genetics that help them do what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those are the individuals where, like, if you look at like a Kobe Bryant, or for example, right? So Kobe Bryant has the physical gifts, right? But the talent in Kobe Bryant is more the outside stuff that goes on. It's like his drive to get better, right?
Right.
His ability to get up and meditate, and those rituals he has, and so that to me is the talent stuff. The physical stuff you're seeing is just a gifted human being that's been lucky to have certain genetics that's helped them get to that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see tons and tons of people who are gifted don't have these. I mean, Dave Collins says the psychological characteristics of excellence, right? They're the ability to low fear of failure. Michael Jordan has that. Kobe Bryant has that. I see Jurgen Klopp in football as a manager has that. Pep Guardiola, you have to play with courage. He's like, there's no fear. Like the fear is not there. It's like you've got to play,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you have like coping skills, so high, a bit able to deal with resilience, or sorry, with adverse response to like failure um, or challenges. Be able to deal with those things. Be able to communicate with your team. So have a social environment to it. Be able to kind of take charge in what you're doing. So um, the ability to self-regulate your practice. That's talent to me. And that's the bit which I think gets missed sometimes, is we're looking at the topsoil stuff, but we're not understanding the individual of, okay, this kid's got something. He's not gifted right now,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got these other things which might carry him through.
Does that come from life learning, or does that come from family structure? They're taught those things, or
I
what do you
think
think
there's
that comes from?
huge amounts of social psychology in that, of like how they're brought up and their surroundings and stuff. I think that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Quite untapped, I think, in trying to understand that. Like if I was in a management group and I was gonna sign a player, whether they're a footballer or even like let's say Nick Saban was trying to get a quarterback into Alabama, right? I'd be like sending somebody to like spend a week with them, right,
Yeah,
and
watch,
see,
see how they interact.
yeah, see what their family dynamic is,
Right.
and so on and so forth. Um, you have those things that with the All Blacks, with the humility of sweeping the locker rooms and
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. That to me is the stuff you don't see. You see the gifted element of like they're good at that. They're a good rugby player. They're a good quarterback or whatnot. But do they have these other things? Skill is again part of the, you can learn skills, you can, but if you've been a spoiled brat all your life, right, then to be able to do that and have that humility to do that, is that is that going to work?
What that was in was Anderson's was Anderson. You mentioned the book earlier. I think
Yeah, Anders Ericsson,
where
and
he
yeah,
used, was it Beethoven or Bach as a child, where he listened to his dad teaching his sister from the time he was an infant, and he had perfect
yeah,
pitch by what, 4 or 6 years old. And the argument was that was a skill development, whether he was taught that or not. He was there listening
yeah,
and could pick that up. So it like gets formulated into his DNA, and he'll have that
yeah.
forever. It's not like someone said do this and this and this, and you'll get better.
No, and you look at, like, I know some people who grew up around Rory, right, and is like, you think that golf swing is absolute, like, a force of nature. No, they worked at that, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he has a physical capability to do it, and then the social element was seeing his parents, grinding and grafting and whatnot. So there's appreciation of what his parents did for him, but there's elements of development in there as well.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
what
just
was it?
all.
Tiger, or who was it that mimicked their dad swinging? I think it was Tiger when he was in the crib. So I mean, you
Yeah, because
start.
he came out like swinging like left-handed or something
Mm-hmm.
to start with, didn't he?
Yeah,
It's
because
not like
he was mirrored. Yeah.
what? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What, as we're getting close to winding down, looking back, because you have had a very impressive career, is there anything that you would have done different, or that you would have told a younger Stuart, saying 25 years ago or 20 years ago?
Um, I don't know if there's anything different, because I think that the everything shapes you, right? So I don't, I wouldn't ever
Moves
say,
you in a
oh,
direction.
yeah, and it does, right? Absolutely. I think that I would have probably tried to understand myself a little bit better, right? In the sense of, like, how I tick, how I am, and whatnot, and how I coach, and that element probably a little bit earlier than
Mm-hmm.
I. But I think that comes with some, I think, an element of, like, having kids and a family, like, nothing's as important as those, and you start to look at things different in the world. And I think if you tell a 20-year-old, oh yeah, start to understand yourself a little bit more, you're going to go, oh yeah, what do you know? I'm ripping and tearing as much as I can right now. I'm having the best time in the world.
Yeah, I got somewhere to be. I'll check you later. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like I said, I tend to not look back too much on certain things like that. I just think that I grew up in a very I think I was lucky in the sense of the year I was in school and the year above me there was very, very, very competitive years, but very close years at the same time. So we lived in a town of like 5,000 people in mid Wales. Like, there's like you wouldn't know it was there. And my best friend in school had 52 caps, 53 caps for Wales. Played for Sunderland, Wolves.
Wow.
I have friends in the year above me went to work in London, in the city. Extremely successful bankers and stuff like this. I had another friend who played goalkeeper in Ireland, and so it was a kind of quite a unique, I think, time in that, and I think that shapes how you are,
Mm-hmm.
and what wanting to, and just the group that you're in and whatnot. And I don't think you have any control over that. I don't. I think that's just how things materialize. I was good at sport, um, and that helped, in that sense, because I had an avenue, right? It was something that I was kind of quite motivated. It was either going to be football or soccer, and or golf. for me. And I was a failed soccer player, but I was a good enough golfer to actually have a career in golf at the same time. So
How do you
yeah,
navigate that with your own kids to where if you seek to provide with them every opportunity that you possibly can and make them as comfortable as possible, but in looking back on your upbringing and your friends and the successes they had with maybe without as many means or opportunities, but somehow made it work. Knowing those two things, how do you use both dynamics so that your own kids can have what they need, but yet still have the drive to want to be successful and not become complacent?
I would say my kids don't necessarily know what I'm doing with them. Right, I don't
That's
make
good if
things
they don't even
easy.
realize it, but they're being.
I don't make things overly easy and whatnot for my kids. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do we provide? Yes, absolutely. Do you have a nice house? Yes. But when it comes to like other things, I just don't believe in the fact of you should just hand everything,
Right.
you know, to like, I just don't. And, but I also want to encourage them to not fall into the stigma of you have to do this or you have to do this, because I think social cultures feed that. Oh, if you come from a certain family, you should be a lawyer, you should be this, you should be this, or what. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, like everybody, my environment that I grew up in told me, with my best friend, with myself, with a number of people I know, we were told we couldn't do things, yet we found a way of doing them. And that's what I do believe that. I think there's an element of if you have a passion and a purpose to do something, you just find a way, right? And you create
Right.
opportunities. My stepbrother is a professional drummer, right? He's doing big concerts around around the world in the UK right now, big stadiums and whatnot. But again, he's from a small town. It's like, but his father was very much like providing opportunities. It was never about, oh, you can never be that. Never. He showed and he loved it. He wanted to do it. So you create opportunities. You put them in spaces to create that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you encourage it and whatnot. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of heartache in that,
Yeah. Not
but
everybody starts from the same place,
but isn't that
but they can
isn't
progress.
that the joy of something as well, though, to be able to, like, you have difficult things and you're kind of moving through those and trying to accomplish something and whatnot. That to me is purpose. If the purpose is strong enough, you'll find a way of doing it.
Oh,
If it's not, then
when that hit me when I was a kid, I used to play a lot of basketball, and one year we were defending champs, and we went to this tournament, and we were put in the bracket because some of the other coaches had some more influence upon the committee. So we were put in the bracket that had a much more difficult challenge to get to the finals again. And while
yeah,
everybody's kind of sitting around looking at this, kind of ticked off because we're all teenagers, and the coach says, "No big deal. We're more than good enough. It'll just be that more sweet when we win it again." And the whole attitude of the team changed just like that. And it's like, yeah,
yeah,
we're going to do this again, just to show everybody who the best
yeah,
is around here.
absolutely, absolutely. Listen, man, I need to jet. So
No problem. You have a great night. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.